the pros and cons of Viviva color sheets. A few weeks ago, I shared this video with you guys that I filmed right after having received my color sheets, and I took you through the swatching process for the 16 colors offered in this product, and I also did a few little tests that I wanted to basically do in order to see what happened, how these colors reacted when I use these techniques that I often use with regular watercolors. And I basically just shared my initial thoughts in that video. And today, after having created quite a few different paintings with these color sheets, I am ready to share my pros and cons list with you so that you can use this information to just come to a conclusion on whether these color sheets are right for you or not. While I share my thoughts on these color sheets, I'm going to be sharing my painting process for an ice cream cone that I created with them. I think it's so important to actually see the product in action, in an actual painting process, as opposed to only seeing swatching videos or having someone just walk you through the physical aspects of the product on hand. Yes, that's important, but ultimately, you're gonna be creating paintings with the product and not just painting little squares. So if you're interested in a more in-depth swatching video and even a more thorough analysis of the product in and of itself in terms of its physical characteristics, then do make sure to check out my previous video on the Viviva color sheets. Today, I'm going to be focusing more on final conclusive thoughts and the pros and the cons. Before getting into it, I want to send out a huge warm welcome to anyone who is new here at my channel. I am so very happy that you found me, and do consider subscribing because every single week I share a new video with art tips, drawing and painting tutorials, and encouragement and productivity tips for artists. Alright, so with that out of the way, I want to get started by mentioning that when you're just about to get started using this product for the very first time, it's important to go in knowing that the paint is not going to react exactly the same way as regular watercolors do. Especially if you're anything like me and you don't have much practice creating paintings using inks or dyes, and you're used to maybe using techniques with regular watercolors such as wet on wet and layering and just mixing colors together, creating your own color mixtures. It's important to know when you're just going in that most likely than not, there is going to be a learning curve involved. So after having explored these color sheets and practiced with them for a few weeks now, I have reached this point at which I am balancing using most of the techniques that I generally use when working with regular watercolors, and the overall process is the same, but it's just simplified a bit. And I'm gonna mention why later on when I give you the specific cons. This said, even though I am using most of the same techniques and overall method that I use with regular watercolors, the outcome doesn't look exactly the same. The colors are very transparent. I have trouble creating very dark values, and overall the outcome is not quite the same as the outcomes that I'm able to achieve using regular watercolors. All this said, I know that I am not the main target for this specific product. Why? Because through the research I've made on Viviva, and I've even talked with people from Viviva themselves, they created this product for people who want to sketch faster, who want to sketch looser maybe, who want to sketch in plein air or in different settings, who don't necessarily need to do a lot of color mixing, who like very bold, bright colors, maybe even used straight out of the pen or tube or whatever it is. And if you've been watching my videos for a bit of time, by this point you probably are already well aware that my painting style is not hyper-realistic by any means, but it's a little bit more towards the realistic side of the spectrum. I don't necessarily like to use very bright, vivid colors. I like more muted colors, maybe a pop of color every now and then. But in many cases, very saturated colors don't lead to very realistic results, so I do a lot of color mixing. I like developing different layers of paint throughout my painting process so that I can really create a wide variety of different values and provide at least some sort of depth and three-dimensionality to whatever it is I am painting. And just generally speaking, I don't do flat illustrative styles very much. However, I've had a blast using this product, and it's been super fun to explore it and to really push my skills using something that is different from what I usually use. The product itself is quality, really well made. Even the wooden casing that Viviva Colors is currently offering in their gift set, they are very well done. And something that I also love about this brand is their dedication to inspiring artists all around the world to keep on creating art even while on a busy schedule. And they are so passionate about continuing to develop their product and continue improving it and just making these different variations of their product and provide more value to their customers. These color sheets are made with very saturated dye and a very small amount of binder. And this is why these colors turn out so bright, so vivid, and at the same time are so easily activated with just a little drop of water, and just a little bit of paint goes a very long way. Whereas regular watercolors, at least if you're using a bit of a higher grade set, those paints are made with pigments and binder. So what I'm trying to get at here is that both Viviva color sheets as well as other color sheets that came before them, such as the Peerless color sheets, they are created with dye, and regular watercolors are created with pigment. Before moving forward, I want to read you what the definition of a pigment and a dye is. And this is straight out of cowans.org, cowans.org. I'm going to leave you the link to this specific page that I am looking at down below in the description box of this video in case you want to read it yourself. But here is what they define to be a pigment. It says, dry pigments are used to create all artist quality paints. Pigments are generally composed of solid matter such as rocks, minerals, metals, charcoal, etc. that have been ground to a powdery talc-like texture. Pigment powder is then mixed with a specific vehicle or carrier to create paint or ink. This vehicle or carrier is oil in the case of oil paints, acrylic polymer emulsion for acrylic paints, gum arabic in the case of watercolors, etc. Relative to dye particles, pigment particles are much, much larger. On the other hand, here's their definition for dye. Dyes are colored chemicals that are either a liquid themselves or in the form of powder that is easily dissolved in a liquid. Our ancestors made dyes from many natural materials such as bark, nutshells, berries, roots, and even insects. Many modern dyes are synthetic and offer brighter, deeper, and longer-lasting colors. The primary issue with dye is that many colors are not considered to be light-fast. This means that many dye colors are not stable under direct exposure to light, especially sunlight, and will fade over time, sometimes quite rapidly. While this is also true for some pigmented colors, it's the exception rather than the rule. They then move on to talk about the difference between pigment and dye-based inks, which you may find helpful or interesting. So make sure to check out that link if you're interested in continuing with that reading. When I was doing my research, I also found a very clear and concise explanation in terms of the difference between a pigment and a dye, offered by duramen.com, duramen.com. This is also going to be left for you below in case you want to go and check it out, but this is the explanation that they offer. The major difference between dyes and pigments is the particle size. Dyes are much finer than pigments. Therefore, dyes are not UV stable, whereas pigments are usually UV stable. And this, once again, has to do with their level of light fastness, or how much they're going to last without fading, which is something that the previous explanation offered too. So if you take into account these things, it's no wonder that the painting process and the final outcome is going to be quite a bit different between these color sheets and regular watercolors. This paint definitely allows for beautiful wet-on-wet effects, and They look like watercolors and act like watercolors in many ways, but from the little experience that I've had actually painting with inks, I would say that they're comparable to inks in the way that they don't become creamy or milky the same way that watercolors do. They pretty much always stay very thin and transparent, even at their most saturated. Right here, as you're seeing me paint this cone, you can probably tell that I am achieving a variety of different values. However, once this painting completely dried, those darkest values lightened quite a bit. And just like with regular watercolors, these paints tend to dry a lot more lightly than how they look when they're wet. But in this case, with these watercolor sheets, I noticed that the paint is even more light, and those darks that look very dark while wet don't look very dark anymore once the painting is completely dry. And no matter how much layering I did, I was unable to achieve those darkest darks that I wanted to achieve, even when I brought in a darker color into the mixture to attempt to darken it. And not only this, but many times when I move forward with my layering process, I disturbed the layer of paint underneath. Sometimes that bottom layer of color completely merged together with the top layer of color, even after I had allowed that previous layer to dry completely. And other times, if I attempted to go in to do some pre-wetting on a section of color that was already dry, there was this outline left around the area that I pre-wetted, which doesn't usually happen when working with regular watercolors. So I definitely found that layering is tricky. And this is why I just simplified my process and just went about these paintings in a much smaller or lesser amount of layers than I would normally do, and just a less amount of detail, and just left or just was okay with not arriving at very dark values or too much of a three-dimensional look in the final dry piece. All right, so with everything that I've shared in this video so far, you probably already have a good idea of pros and cons, or at least a lot of them. But just to finish up this video, I want to provide a concise bullet point kind of list for my pros and my cons. All right, so let's get started with the list of cons, or the negative things that I found to be true about this product. So first and foremost, they stained my hands quite a bit. And I found that if we do not allow the color sheets to dry completely before closing them and placing them in our bag, if we are outside or out of the studio, then we could run the risk of staining our bag or even our clothes. So I would recommend carrying them in some sort of Ziploc bag or something along those lines to make sure that that color doesn't start to drip and just stain your things. And in terms of my hands, I noticed that it took me 2, sometimes 3 hand washes with plenty of soap to get that color completely out of my skin. The second con is that if you lack water control, it's very easy to make a mess and waste way too much product. The Viviva color sheets can last you a very long time, and in their website, they even say that one color sheet is the equivalent of a half pan in terms of the amount and its longevity. However, if you go in with a ton of water into your color sheets, they probably are going to last a lot less. So remember that it only takes a very small amount of water to activate that color, and a little bit goes a long way. The third con is that there is no way to rearrange your different colors or only separate out the colors that you want to use because of their booklet form. The next con is that, as I was mentioning before, they are not light fast and they will fade over time. So in my case, I would never use this product to create finalized pieces or pieces that I'm intending to sell the originals of. Another con that I can think of is that we don't really have much mixing area at all. The color sheets do come with this separate piece of cardboard, as I shared in my previous video, that you can attach onto the very back sheet And you can use this as a small mixing area, but if you're anything like me, I do a lot of my own color mixing and I need to have several different wells. So if you're like this too, then you're probably gonna have to use a separate color mixing palette. And finally, in terms of the cons, I would say, just like I was mentioning before, we have to go in just knowing that this paint is not going to react the same way that regular watercolors do. And most likely than not, if you don't have experience with inks and dyes, there's gonna be a bit of a learning curve. Okay, let's move on to the pros or the positive things about this product now. So the first pro is, of course, these colors are incredibly vibrant. The second is that these color sheets offer a great variety of colors. Moving on to the third pro, this would be that they are very long lasting if we are careful when using them and make sure that we're only using a small amount of water when activating that paint. Pro number 4 is that these are very easily activated and a little goes a long way. Point number 5 that I added here into this pros list is that they are very easy to carry around. These color sheets are very compact and very lightweight. Pro number 6 is that it's very difficult to create mud with these paints because they are very highly transparent. Another one is that they are non-toxic and eco-friendly. In their website, Viviva Colors mentioned that these products are made with recycled material and that they use sustainable practices that don't sacrifice the quality of their product. And then the next one is that they offer this beautiful quality customizable wood cover or case that really makes for a beautiful personal gift for any kind of art lover or art enthusiast. You can get the person's name and a little quote or phrase engraved on the front cover of this wooden casing. Another awesome thing is that Viviva offers this refillable watercolor paintbrush that comes along with their sketcher set and other packages. That's an awesome option for the artists who do love to paint outdoors or at different settings and like to take a minimal amount of supplies with them. Personally, as you can see, I like using my regular watercolor paintbrushes as I can switch around between the different sizes and types that I need throughout the painting process and just have more control with them. I would, however, consider taking that refillable portable watercolor paintbrush if I were to take this set off on a trip somewhere. And the last pro that I would like to add to this list is that even though in the instructions in the booklet, they do mention that it is recommended to allow the color sheets to dry completely after having painted with them before closing the booklet, the protective paper that is in between the color sheets in the booklet do an excellent job at protecting the color sheets even if they are wet. Nothing sticks together because they are water repellent. To finish up, I would recommend this product to those of you out there who like creating maybe more expressive, colorful, illustrative style watercolor paintings, and especially those of you who are interested in having a watercolor set that you can take along with you while you're out of the studio doing some plein air painting or off in a coffee shop or even for traveling. Alright everyone, that is going to do it for today's video. I really hope that you found it helpful. And if you did, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up because it really helps support the work that I am doing here on YouTube. If you have any comments or questions for me, make sure to leave them down below in the comment section. I read every single comment and do my best to get back to you. Thank you so very much for watching today. Don't forget to subscribe so that I can see you very soon for another video, and stay inspired. Bye guys!